So the world's going to go through some significant changes, and here we go. World War II, everything has been set in place, and let's get this war going here. This war will be kind of the end of an era. 1945 is seen as kind of the end of an era when this war is over, but to get there, you have to go through mass atrocities and mass killings. And so, how do we get there? Well, there's two main sides of this war. You have the Axis powers, which are Japan, Germany, and Italy. They sign a pact with each other. The three of them together have a pact in 1940. They had all had some unique things, or some things in common. First, you have ultra nationalist tendencies. They are remilitarizing and conquering. They had new governments due to economic troubles, and they had all hated the Treaty of Versailles. They had all those things come together. They are led by the guys you see on the bottom here. That's Hideki Tojo on your left, and on your right is Mussolini and Hitler for Italy and Germany, respectively. On the other side, you have the Allies. You have France, Britain, U.S., China, and the USSR. You can see their leaders here. That is Churchill on the left, Winston Churchill, the leader of Britain. That is FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt for the U.S., and Joseph Stalin on the right for the USSR. In all the cases, their colonial powers are going to follow them. And in all cases, especially on the Allies' case, they're so economically entwined with each other. I mean, think of why China is going to fight on the side of the British. Two reasons. First of all, the enemies with Japan. But then second of all, think of China's economics tie-ins, especially with the British. So to start this war, you're looking first, Japan is going to be your first aggression. Japan is going to conquer what we know as Manchuria in 1931. Okay, they are super aggressive for a couple reasons. First, let me move this down so you can see. There you go. All right, they are super aggressive for a couple reasons. First, Manchuria had lots of resources. They had lots of resources, and they want those resources because they are going to fuel them. There's one of the things that's commonly forgotten about in this war is, yeah, it's a land of war and stuff like that, but the resource elements of this cannot be understated. Now, let's think of where China is. Manchuria, remember, is in the northeastern part of modern-day China, but a unique own cultural characteristics. In China, coming out of this, they were in civil war. You had the nationalists and the communists. They are going to put aside their differences to fight against the Japanese. But they can't work together very well, and Japan is going to win pretty quickly. And they're actually going to take control by all of China in 1937. Now, Japan is definitely going to commit some atrocities along the way here. Japan, remember, xenophobic, ultra-nationalistic tendencies. And when the rape of Nanjing takes place in Nanjing, China, this major city in China, it's not good. Raping women, by the thousands, murdering hundreds of thousands of unarmed soldiers. Civilians are burned. It's about 400,000 Chinese are killed. It is a mass atrocity. They were literally using human beings for bayonet practice, and they would just openly fire machine guns into pits. Those ultra-national tendencies that we are better, we're trying to rid ourselves of these people on the planet, is not good at all. Not good at all. Now, in 1937, they also took over Shanghai through aerial bombings as well. Now, Japan had signed a neutrality pact with the USSR in 1941 to try to keep them out. Japan did not want the USSR getting involved on the Asia side of the war. On the European side of the war, though, this is going to be different. So the Italians didn't like where they were after basically, even though being an allied power during World War I, they didn't get anything in the Treaty of Versailles. The Italian economy tanks. And therefore, you start to have some issues with just their economy as a whole. So they are going to start to recover. Now, Mussolini had promised national glory for all of them. Now, Ethiopia, they had tried to take over way back to the Berlin Conference. Doesn't really work very well, but they do take it over here. They send 250,000 soldiers, tanks, artillery, and aircraft, and they conquer Ethiopia. Italy lost 2,000 men. Ethiopia lost 275,000 men. The League of Nations tries to step in, but it's highly ineffective. Spain had become fascist as well, and the just kind of fascism's growing. Fascism, Italy had moved its way into Ethiopia. They had taken over Albania as well in 1939, had a foothold in the Balkans. They have a foothold in the Balkans, and so by this 1939, let's look to see what's happened here. So you have Ethiopia has taken over is taken over by the Italians. Japan is moving. The League of Nations has done nothing on either side of things. There needs to be something because Hitler also has aggressive foreign policy. He called the Treaty of Versailles the November crime. He blamed the Jews, communists, liberals, Poland, France, etc., and he is ready to go. He wants to go in there and start doing something. So he basically says, forget the Treaty of Versailles. He leaves the League of Nations in 1933. The military, which he couldn't do anything about, or he wasn't supposed to do anything about, says, forget it. I'm building a military again. What are you going to do about it? He takes over the Rhineland. He helps in Spain. He helps to unify Germans. That was one of his goals. He wants to unify all the German people. And so there's a famous peace conference. Peace conference is in September of 1938, and it's the Munich conference. At the Munich conference, it's France, it's Italy, it's Great Britain, and Germany. And Hitler promised to take no more land. Hitler promised to take no more land in return for keeping the ones he already had. So he gets to keep the Sudetenland. And basically, no one wants to go to war again. The leader of Britain at the time is a guy by the name of Neville Chamberlain. And he calls it the peace for a time. And he literally holds up the document when he gets back to Britain. And he holds it up and says, this is great. This is great. We have peace. We have peace. And no one wants to go fight in World War II or a world war again. Because remember, you are less than 25 years coming out of the war. It's 20 years after. 1918 to 1938. Now, they secretly, at this time, Stalin and Hitler had made a deal with each other in August of 1939. It's called the Non-Aggression Pact, that Stalin and Hitler agreed not to attack each other. However, they do agree to split up Poland so that Hitler would attack Poland, Hitler would attack Poland, Stalin would attack Poland, and they'd split it, but they would stop each other. And both sides would stay neutral. Stalin had a secret plan to divide up Eastern Europe. Germany gets Western Poland, USSR gets Eastern Poland, Romania, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all the things they had lost to Germany in the treaty to get Germany out of World War I. In other words, they're going to start growing again. And so Hitler thinks he has everything under control because he had learned something from the Weimar Republic at the end of the First War, at the end of the First World War, which was, hey, do not fight a two-front war. And if you're not going to have a two-front war, you have a chance. This leads, now Neville Chamberlain is kind of reviewed in history as kind of seen as being naive, and he kind of was. Because on September 1st, 1939, Germany attacked Poland. Conquered in less than a month. They use a tactic called blitzkrieg. They'll send in the Air Force to weaken everybody, and then they'll send their troops and tanks behind it, where everything's already weakened. And quickly, this is going to bring people into war. Because then, when they attack Western Europe in May of 1940, this brings France in, which brings everybody else in. France falls really quickly. Italy comes into the war at this point as well. And aggression just leads to declarations of war. The Soviets, remember, are also conquering at this point. The Soviets took the western half of Poland up into Finland and basically all of Eastern Europe. The battle is raging in the Atlantic over shipping. The German U-boats are trying to stop British imports. And in April of 1940, Germany controls Denmark, Norway, Belgium, France, Netherlands. And remember, Spain was their ally. The Brits are alone at this point. The Battle of Dunkirk, which is one of the most famous ones of the war, the French soldiers have to evacuate because they literally have nowhere to be on the European mainland, and they go to Britain. They are rescued at Dunkirk. And so now there's really only one power left on the western side of the hemisphere, on the western side of Western Europe, and that's the British. And so the Germans are going to use their air force, the Luftwaffe, to come in and bomb London, and they bomb them every night because they knew that they would struggle to get there by air. They would struggle to get there by air. And so you can see here's some aerial photography that you can also see Hitler in front of the Eiffel Tower. And what you have is the Brits, if they don't hold out, the war is in trouble for the Allies. The U.S. has not gotten involved yet in the West. The U.S. has not gotten involved yet in the West. And for nights, among nights, German Air Force is going in to bomb the industrial centers of the UK, especially Manchester and also in London, to try to get to basically break the strength of the Brits. This Air Force bombing is known as the Battle of Britain. Britain would move stuff because they'd see them coming with the radar technology that had been in development. This is the first time Hitler is going to lose. This is the first time that Hitler is going to lose. Hitler controls almost all of Western Europe, but now he has to turn his attention elsewhere. And so he goes into the Balkans, down into southeastern Europe, and then he goes into North Africa, and he's very successful. And then you can maybe argue he does one of the big turning points of the war. He decides to go for Russia. The term that he uses is Lebensraum, which is German for living space. What does that really mean? Resources, just like the Japanese were going for. They need the farmland. And so Germany is going to invade the USSR in what is known as Operation Barbarossa in 1941. Now, what's one thing that we've learned about in this class so far? Don't attack Russia in winter, so they attack in June. Hey, that makes sense. But that means winter is going to come eventually. Now, the Nazis are helped by Hungary, Finland, and Romania. Why? They were conquered by Russia. So you have a huge multinational army that is forming to attack the USSR. Now, the Jews, the Slavs, the Bolsheviks would all, if they can get rid of them, Hitler thought, there's our living space. He thought if you kick in the door, all the rotten structures that communism was would fall down. And Germany attacks with 3.6 million soldiers, 3,700 tanks, and 25,000 planes. And the USSR does something that they've always done. They are going to lose land and burn it as you go. Now, one of the things that hurts the Germans is the USSR has huge amounts of reserves, especially of oil. And the Germans decide we are going to put major cities under siege. So they seized Leningrad up there in the northwestern part. They have basically reached Moscow by December of 1941. Stalin was running out of ideas. So Stalin is able to get his troops mobilized. And the 150 German divisions are facing 360 from the Communist Red Army. Industry in the Ural Mountains, way to the east, because here's a big difference between World War I and World War II. Russia now has the infrastructure in place from Stalin's 5-year plans to get their industrial production from the further east in the country and get it to the west part of the country. This gets supplies, especially tanks for the Allies. But the Russians are truly the people who are going to stop them on the Eastern Front. Battle of Britain stops them on the Western Front. On the Eastern Front, it is the Russians. At Leningrad, they are put under siege. And the harsh winter, it really takes a toll on Leningrad, and people are just desperate. They are barely surviving. The German troops don't have any winter clothing either, and it's brutal on both sides. The German soldiers, about 100,000, suffer frostbite, and there will have to be 2,000 amputees. At that point, the German army moves south, and they go to Stalingrad. And Stalingrad, it's in the Caucasus Mountain region. It's named for Stalin, and Stalin says, this is it. We're not going any further back. If we go further back here, we are done. And this is where Stalin puts up his last stand. And the Battle of Stalingrad stops the German advance. So your 3 key battles that basically stop German advances: Battle of Britain, Britain stops them. Battle of Leningrad stops the advance, and Stalingrad starts pushing them back.